Very Gimel, Alochates, and Yud, 9 and 10. Kriyazu, the reading of the Torah, ain't avoid. It's not a service. Levigo Chamros, Likvais, Big Day Choil. Therefore, if he wants to wear garments of the weekday, Lavonim, which are white, Mishaloi, his own, Kairei, because when you're not doing the service outside the Beis HaMikdash, you were not allowed to wear the priestly garments. And what's the Likvais of Big Day Lavon? If you wanted to read it in white clothing, Kairei. Because the garments of Kuna can be benefited from, as we explained. Let's see the Peirush. If he wants to read them the Big Day Lovam, he doesn't have to read them the Big Day Kuna. And if he wants to, in other words, he can do it his own white garments or the white garments that he is wearing at the time, because he hasn't changed yet back to the golden garments. Kairei, he reads it, even though it's not an avoida. You can read it, because Big Day Kuna you can benefit from when you are not doing the services we explained. He means in Hilchos Yom HaKippurim, Perek Ches Halachah Aleph, he mentions that the garments of the Kahanim you can benefit, and therefore you can wear them on the day of the service, even when they're not doing the service. And therefore the Kohen Gadol can read in the Torah and Big Day Lovam, even though it's not an avodah. The Mayim Chaim, which is written by the Pri Chodesh, writes that even though the Rambam it codifies the halacha that Big Day Kuna you can benefit from them, it could be that even the one who says that you can usually not derive benefit from the garments of a Kohen Kuna of the avodah unless you're doing service, it would permit the Kohen Gadol to read the Torah when he's wearing the holy garments of Yom Kippur, because it's a subdivision of the activity of the day. In the Mishnah Yuma, it's explained that you can read with secular garments, which are his. In the Mishnah Yuma 68b, it's explained that he can read with the white garments, and there we find that the Kohen, his mother made him special garments. He can wear them for the service of an individual, but he has to give it afterwards to the tzibur. Not afterwards. He has to give it before he uses it that it should become public property. Rashi explains two Peirushim. What's avodas yochid? Where we find that the Kohen Gadol had a private service, either taking out the kaf machto, which is not necessary for the tzibur, just that he has to take it out, or reading the parsha. But the question on the second explanation, why then does it say in the Mishnah that he should give it to the tzibur? Rambam that doesn't write that he has to give it to the tzibur would seem that reading is not an avodah, and therefore he can wear his own private garments. We're going back up to Yud on the top. How does he read it? He sits, because in the Ezes Noshim you can sit. It's not part of the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash. Well, now we'll go down to the Peirush. Specifically, he sits. But in the Azorah, where the Mizbeach is found, there it's forbidden to sit, because there's no sitting. No one's allowed to sit in the Azorah. Only kings of the house of David. And this is the order of the Azorah. 11 amas, the first 11 amas from when you enter from the east to going to the west, is called Ezes Yisrael. The next 11 amas are called Ezes Kohanim, before the Mizbeach. These are all have a kedusha of Azorah. You can't sit there. But in Ezes Noshim, which is outside the Azorah, you could sit. When all the populace is standing around him. The Chazan HaKnesses, the one who took care of the Beis HaKnesses, Noitel Sefer Torah, takes the Sefer Torah and Noitel the Rosh HaKnesses, and he gives it to the head of the Knesset, the Beis HaKnesses. Meaning he usually decides who's going to daven in the Beis HaKnesses. It means a gabbai. In the Rosh HaKnesses, gives it to the Skan, gives it to the Skan Kohen Gadol. And Skan Noisno le Kohen Gadol. And the Skan, who's on his right, gives it to the Kohen Gadol. Kohen Gadol Oymed Mekabel. Kohen Gadol stands and receives it. Oymed V'Koreh. He stands and he reads it. what does he read? Parshas Achimois, and the Achbe Oser, that's in Parshas Meyados, until the end of the specific reading of Yom Kippur. And that you can read at one time because they're very close to each other. The Goyel is at Torah, and then he rolls the Torah, Manichoy Bechekoi. He places it in his bosom. And he says, more than I read before you is written here. In the Torah, there's much more. And he would read about also Chumash HaPikudim. He would read also Chodesh, which is in Pinchas, Ad Sefer Inyan, until the end of the Yom Kippur. He would read this orally. The Musafim, which are in Bamidbar, Kovtes, Velomo, why does he read it orally? Because it's too much of a trouble to have the Sefer Torah be rolled when the people are waiting. Still, Rambam writes that you don't roll the Sefer Torah in Tzibur because of the honor of the Tzibur. You shouldn't have to wait. And therefore, the parashas are next to each other. The Achimois, the Emoy, you can roll it in a very short time. But if you want to read Parashas Pinchas, then you won't be able to roll it while the translator is translating. As they were reading, they would read and translate, and therefore the tzibur are waiting, and it's not an honor for the tzibur to wait. That's what it says in the Gemara. That's what the Mari Kurkis explains the Rambam. Why didn't they take out a second Sefer Torah? Meaning one should not read in two svarim because they'll assume the first sefer is posel, and therefore he has to say, I'm putting it away even though I'm reading further, not because it's posel, but because of the korat tzibur. And this reason that Rambam writes is the reasoning of Rav Huna of Yehuda b'shem of Sheshes and Soita. Reish Lakish says that you don't make a brocha that you don't need, and therefore the Kohen Gadol must have made a brocha on the reading of the Torah. And Mari Kurkis says if you're reading the second Sefer Torah, you would have to make a brocha on the second Sefer Torah, Birkas HaTorah. Now, Avodas Yisrael questions why the Rambam didn't bring the second reason of having to make another brocha, and other commentaries did bring both reasons. Mara Migrin, who has a work on the order of the service on Yom Kippur, writes in the name of Eben HaYalchi that the reason that we are noig to read the Beis HaKnesses in Yom Kippur in the Me'adris in Parshas Emor, like the Kohen Gadol, is because in the Beis HaKnesses you only read what has to do with the Hilchos Yom HaKippurim in Achimois. Parshas Pinchas, regarding the Karbonos, they read as well. But the Kohen Gadol would read in Parshas Emor, which says that you should not do any work. That we don't read. Why? Because they read it then, because people should know that today you're not allowed to do work, because they see it the whole time they're standing there. They see the Kohen Gadol doing all types of malachas which would be forbidden for an individual. Therefore, you say Emor Kol Malach Isaseh Be'etzem Hayom Hazeh. But today, when we know that when we don't have any Beis HaMikdash because of our sins, therefore you don't need to read it to remind the people. Taizi Yishanim Yuma, 70 questions. How can a Kohen Gadol read the written Torah orally? You're not allowed to read the written Torah orally, as in Gittin 60b. And he explains two answers. One, in the name of that his Rebbe answered that it's not forbidden. It's what's preferable, and therefore, because the tzibur is waiting, they permitted it. And the Rivoah answers, since he's only speaking about the service of the day, he can read it orally, just like we say the psukim of Musafim, meaning that in their times they didn't have Sidurim, and they used to say in Musaf the psukim orally, even though it's written Torah. And that's what we find in the Yerushalmi. Therefore, the Kohen Gadol could read orally, because it's the order of the day. So we find in the Talmidei Rabbeinu Yoina and Brochus, Testament Beis, on the Mishnah, by Kriya Shema, that from that time and forward, you can read Seishu Kriya Shema after the time of reading of saying it has passed, like you read in the Torah. That they say, how can you say it? You have to look inside. If there's an obligation to say it, you can say it Baal Peh, even when he doesn't do it l'shem mitzvah. Since the Kohen Gadol would read about the karbonos, and there's a mitzvah to say the karbonos, therefore he could read it Baal Peh, and that's many of the later commentaries discuss this. The Chido, Birkei Yosef writes that the Marach Rab Chaim Abulafia proves from here that it's forbidden to read Baal Peh those things which are b'ksav is only the Rabbanon, because if it would be the Raisa, they wouldn't permit the Kohen Gadol to read. Rashi in the Mishnah points out, and even reading a parsha, one parsha would impede the continuation. From the Gemara, it says on the posuk in the Gemara in Daf Hey Amud Beis, the posuk Zeh Adovo, and they read it as this is the words. That's why you have to do it. Baal Pri Chodesh brings Yerushalmi and Yuma. Amar Idi b'shem Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak, the name of Rabbi Yitzchak. How do I know that reading the parashas is part something that impedes one from going forward further? It says Vayas. What does it mean? Teach us, as HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe, that you have to do the reading, just like Aaron did the reading at the time that Moshe commanded him to do the Avodah.